with innovative solutions that help entrepreneurs, other business people, and the world to actually understand the shift that the world is going through. And one of the ways that we're doing this is to reach out to the community and to specialists like Musonda to help us navigate our way through the current world and the changes of the world. As we make observations around the world, we're seeing that things are no longer the same. You look at Europe, America, and the number of people that are affected, whether it's work or businesses that are getting affected, and the number of new innovations that are coming out. We would like to understand how businesses and their teams what they can expect in light of this current circumstances, and what the world and Zambia could possibly look like in the future. So a little bit about Musonda. She is a people person with a foundation in human psychology, philosophy, and human resources management. Musonda recently embarked on her Ph.D. journey, well done, Musonda, in organisational behaviour. For the last 5 years, Musonda has held leadership positions in human resources management and aims to help shape the Zambian HR narrative. Today, she'll be giving us a talk on the immediate future work that will depend on our ability to create it, and she'll discuss the options available to employers and employees regarding various types of leave, flexible work, and other available choices so that we can make great decisions. Hi, Musonda. I think you might want to unmute yourself. Hi, Musonda. How are you doing?
I'm good, Simonza. How are you?
I'm great. I just want to let people know that we do have other upcoming webinars before I hand over to you. The next one will be on community in Africa and the lessons gleaned from Africa, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which will be coming up on Thursday, the 14th of April, 2020. And a Brave New World strategies to navigate through uncertainty, which is coming up on Friday, the April 15th, next week, both at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I'd like to hand over today's session to you. It's exciting to see that people are, even on their holiday, are willing to connect and listen to what you have to say. So over to you, Musonda.
Thank you very much, Simonza. So I'm really excited about being here because I genuinely believe COVID-19 has changed not only our daily lives, but honestly, the way we work. It's something as simple as think of the number of people who are working remotely. You know, I think we've all heard that Intercontinental has declared 180 redundancies, and basically we're unsure about how to progress. So hopefully I'll be able to highlight a few options and just kind of provide guidelines. I'm going to ask that everyone mutes their mic just so that there's no feedback on my side and everyone's able to listen properly. So let's get into the presentation. Okay, so like I had stated, disruption lays ahead. So a few options have been given to us in terms of what we can do with the COVID-19 situation. And I think the biggest demarcation thus far has been between essential sectors and non-essential sectors, in that certain sectors have continued to forge ahead and might actually even make a profit from this. Easy ones to think of are internet providers, because think about it, as opposed to sitting somewhere in a room or doing this via a webinar. I've never done a webinar, by the way, and it's really exciting. But on the other end, you have businesses that can forge forward ahead. But whether you're a farmer, so let's say you grow cabbages, right? And you used to deliver these cabbages of yours to Intercontinental. Just because you can continue to farm, it significantly then affects your end users, or you don't have end users. So disruption lays ahead. And what can we do? How can we plan for it? How can we mitigate it? So I've highlighted a few options that I think would be viable to quite a number of organizations as well as people. And this is not something that's just for employers. I think that's what I can say. Yes, it's not something that only affects employers, because at the end of the day, you're an employee, you know? You depend on your paycheck, your family depends on your paycheck. So your ability to earn money in the future is significantly affected by this. So you also need to understand what your options are as an employee. And furthermore, I think it's very important for people to understand what their legal options are, because a lot of decisions are being made arbitrarily without necessarily thinking about what constitutes an employment relationship. So yes, there's a crisis going on. Yes, there's a global pandemic. Yes, the world seems like it's falling apart, but still, you have an employment contract. If you're unionized, you have a collective bargaining agreement. As a country, we're governed by the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019. And all of these things have legal implications for whatever decision you're going to make as an organization, or whatever decision you're going to accept as an employee. So it's very important to consider all of these things. The first one I'm going to go into is flexible work. And in this, I have included remote work as well as rotational work. And this would apply to organizations that are able to continue working. So the first thing to ask yourself is, what are the critical roles within our organization? And I say this with the best of intentions. Not all roles are critical. You don't need everyone to be working right at this moment, right now. It's unfortunately not necessary. So you really need to demarcate which roles are critical in your organization and which roles are not critical within your organization. I'll explain later on what options you have with the non-critical staff. The second one to ask is, which roles can be conducted remotely? So let's say if most of the work you do is knowledge work, you're able to do the majority of your work sitting on your laptop. That's okay, you know, you're able to go home and work from home. But imagine you work in a workshop and you're a mechanic. It's a bit harder to take the truck home, so you might need to stay in and work. So that's then the next thing. So which people need to physically come into the workplace, and which other people are able to work from home? And this is important because, well, COVID-19 is spread by human interaction. So if you're then able to reduce the number of people who are within the workplace and send the people who can work from home, and have the people who need to come in, already you're doing your part as an organization. The other thing to ask yourself is, can our technology support remote work? Because unfortunately, not all organizations are that technologically adept. And it's okay if you're not. So if everyone needs to come into the office, that's fine. But another question to then ask yourself is, what measures have we put in place to ensure that, you know, we're able to socially distance people? Where do we have our hand sanitizers? Are we providing face masks to our employees? And then lastly, and I think this is very, very important, what is our anticipated end date? Because you can't work remotely forever. So it could be that, you know, you could say as an organization, we're going to work remotely, or we're going to work on shift systems or rotationally for 2 weeks. And then after that, we're going to review, and it's okay. Because what's going on right now is very agile, it's very dynamic. So it's difficult to plan, and that's okay. But at least set up timelines for yourself in which you can then review how, for example, your remote work has worked and your rotational work has how your rotational work has worked, to just ensure that you're moving along. And I keep saying this to everyone who asks, remember to be kind to yourselves. This is something that's happening for the first time. You've never done remote work before. You've never done rotational work before. You're not going to get it right the first time. So it's okay. Breathe easy. So I talked about having critical staff and non-critical staff. One option that has been provided by I think that was the Ministry of Labor via press release, is they allowed for organizations to be able to send their employees on annual leave during this period. So that's an option that you have for non-critical staff, or if you're an organization that simply is not working anymore, but you can still afford to pay salaries, this is an option that's available for you. And because typically each employee accrues 2 leave days per month, and at the end of the year, that's then 24 days. It could be that an employee at this point in time, because it's April, only has 8 days. So you're then able to prorate. No, that's not the correct word. You're then able to allow the employee to take leave days that they have not accrued. I don't know if I'm making any sense. So in 1 year, employees have 24 leave days available to them at this point in time. If your contract, for example, started in January, you would only be sitting on 8 leave days, but the organization might want you to take leave for 14 days, 15 days. So they're then able to lend you those days, and they will be deducted from you as you accrue them. So that's another option that's available. However, it's imperative to note that this is not an option that's available for all organizations, because at the end of the day, employees still get paid when they're on leave. So if your organization cannot afford to pay salaries, this might not be the option for you. Which then brings us into absenteeism. So I'm still talking about organizations that are currently working. You may find that the rates of absenteeism in your organization go up simply because people are scared to come to work. They're scared that, maybe they'll have to go on a bus, and in the bus they interact with so many people, and then they have to come to work, and at work they interact with so many people, and they don't want to get COVID-19 because it's scary. So what options are available to you as an employer? Well, firstly, you have your code of conduct, which already governs how you deal with COVID, with absenteeism. So COVID-19 shouldn't then stray you away from your basic policies. And then also as an employer, you have to ensure that you have the basics in place, once again, social distancing, have you allowed for that within your organization? Do you have hand sanitizer? Do you have hand basins? Do people have access to masks and gloves if they need them? And so on and so forth, just to mitigate people's anxiety. It helps, it really does. Okay, so we now go into our less joyful options. I think that's what I'm going to go with, yes. Our less joyful options. So the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019 has an allocation for forced leave. And it basically entails that an employer is able to send an employee on forced leave, but this has to be done with their basic pay. And as you can see, the second point then states that the minister may, by statutory instrument, prescribe the circumstances under which an employee is required to be sent on forced leave. So thus far, no SI has been provided, but the Minister of Labour did state that for organizations that are in the tourism and leisure sector, because most of them are closing down and shutting down, or at least they currently don't have business, they're able to place their employees on forced leave. But once again, the problem with this, and we've seen it with Intercontinental, is you still have to pay basic pay. And if you're not earning anything, how are you able to afford salaries? So there's more options for this, but thus far, forced leave in Zambia has only been allowed for the hotel, tourism, and leisure sector. It hasn't necessarily been permitted for other organizations. So if this is something that you may be considering, or is something that's being considered within your workplace, but you don't fall within these parameters of hospitality and leisure, it's something that has to be done in consultation with the Ministry of Labour. So, yeah. Redundancy. So this one is a bit of a difficult one in that at some point in time, certain organizations may decide that they're unable to continue with their operations. Thus, they may declare some of their employees redundant. And once again, and it's such a clear example, it's right there. Intercontinental have declared 180 people redundant. So what does this mean? What exactly does it entail, and how can it be done? So an employer is considered to have terminated the contract of employment of an employee by reason of redundancy if the termination is wholly or in part due to the employer ceasing or intending to cease to carry on their business, the business ceasing or diminishing or expected ceasing or diminishing of the requirement of the employees. Basically, you don't have tasks for that employee anymore, or the employee's conditions of service alter significantly. I think another thing to state about redundancy is, in order to separate with the employee, you have to pay 2 months for every year served. So similar to gratuity, although gratuity is 3 months, redundancy is 2 months. So this has financial implications. And then the other thing is, an employer can't arbitrarily just declare employees redundant. This has to be done in consultation with the Ministry of Labor, and the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019 actually provides guidelines for how this should be done. So I've literally just put in the basics, and it's something to consider, but please remember that it has financial as well as legal implications. Okay, so, and I find this quite funny because I don't think anyone's really talking about this sick leave. So once again, we have a global health pandemic on our hands, and I feel like Zambia is very fortunate in that thus far we only have 39 cases, but that's not telling of what's going to happen in the future. So what happens if you contract COVID-19? How are you protected? So currently our employment code allows for sick leave insofar as an employee is able to present a valid sick note from a health practitioner. And this is split into 2 parts. So for full-time employees, they're allotted 6 months of sick leave. The first 3 months are on full pay, and the last 3 months are on half pay. And for employees on short-term contracts, they have 1 month sick leave, well, 26 days, but 1 month. So the first 26 days are on full pay, and the next 26 days are on half pay. And this might be something that you need to consider, because if you then have an employee who's sick and you still have to pay them, that has financial implications. But then also, what does that mean for the business continuity of your organization? You know? So that's why it's very important to put in place the various health measures being suggested, because human beings really are an organization's greatest asset. And unfortunately, they're also the most susceptible. So it's something that every employer and employee, I think, genuinely has to consider. Okay, so apart from sick leave, we also have what is termed as family responsibility leave, and this kind of works in the reverse. So family responsibility leave allows employees to go away for a certain period of time to take care of a sick spouse, child, or dependent. And in totality, this is 10 days. So imagine if one of your employees has a spouse, a dependent, or a child who has COVID-19. They have this allocation of 10 days to help, to help their family member, to take care of their family member. However, because, and I don't know the science of this, so please correct me, because that person would then be at risk of contracting COVID-19, they would then have to be quarantined for 21 days. So it's not as simple as I've taken my family responsibility leave and I'll be back in 10 days, but you also have to allow for the 21-day quarantine period. So this might be something that the Ministry of Labour might want to look into, and how exactly it will be enforced in this particular situation. So food for thought. All right. Another thing organizations are considering are salary reductions. I think I stated this in the very beginning. Just because your organization is within the essential sector or within the realm of essential organizations and you're still going on and you're still working, doesn't necessarily mean that it won't have financial implications for you. At the very beginning, I gave an example of a farmer who supplies their produce to a hotel. Now that the hotels are closed, just because the farmer is still able to produce doesn't necessarily mean that they still have a market. So this might be something that quite a number of organizations are considering. I think I watched a video of the Hilton hotel chains. That was a week ago. And basically they explained that their entire management staff had gotten 50% salary cuts. They had closed, I think, 30% of the organizations or their hotel chains within one location, and there was more to come. The CEO had taken a salary cut, 100% salary cut for 1 year. And these are things that we have to start considering within our organizations, because at the end of the day, you might find that you still want to continue to exist as an organization, but you can't afford the labor force. So this is something that has to be considered. But because remuneration is something that is structured within the employment contract, it can't be done arbitrarily by the organization. It has to be done in consultation with the employees. And that's why I keep saying this is a conversation that's important for everyone, because if you think about it and you think about what reductions you're able to take within your salary and for how long, even as you're being pulled into such a conversation, you've set your boundaries, you have your parameters. So it's something that has to be considered and something that might be very apparent in our future. Okay, so this is a bit contentious, unpaid leave, in that the Zambian employment law does not allow for unpaid leave. However, I think there's still quite a number of organizations that haven't necessarily shut down, or they haven't decided to declare their employees redundant. They're waiting to see how this whole thing plays out. So maybe they've shut down for 2 months or 3 months, and they would like to put their employees on unpaid leave, and perhaps when all of this dies down, if that will ever happen, when all of this dies down, they would then want to restart their businesses. But because this is not something that is within our employment code, you're unable to do it. However, if you feel that it's something that's beneficial to you or your organization, kindly go to the Ministry of Labour. And I keep talking about them because they're the people who are there to help you. They need to help you. They're the people who can help you. And if you don't consult them, you're breaking the law for all intents and purposes. So don't leave yourself compromised. I'm going to say this again. I said it at the beginning and I'm going to say it again. The majority of the options I have talked about have legal implications and should be considered in line with all the things that form the employment contract, or rather the employment relationship, such as the employment contract, if you have unionized workers or you're a unionized worker, your collective bargaining agreement, as well as the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019. So, what does the future hold? I think I've said a lot of bleak things. Usually I talk about more positive things, but this is the nature of the times. And I think it's important for us to have the bleak conversation, to talk about potential salary reductions and redundancies, because this is being called a defining event for our generation. So 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about this. And I think whatever decisions we make, either as employers or employees or people who are in management and have decision-making power over other people. When all of this blows over, or at least when a new normal has been established, which side of history do you want to sit on? And it's very important to remember to be human to each other during all of this. Yes, your business has needs, but your employees are genuinely people. They have dreams and they have hopes and they have ambitions. And this is not something that they brought about. So think about their best interests as well. And I think my advice for employees is, I don't have to tell you this. I don't think I have to tell anyone who works within the Zambian sector. Our economy is strained. Businesses are barely able to survive. So during this entire period, how are you going to be able to add value to your organization? How are you going to ensure its business continuity? I work for an organization that has been around for over 50 years. And during this entire thing, my motto, or the one thing that has been going through my mind, is this thing has been around for 50 years. It is not going to close on my watch. Come hell or high water, we're going to make it. And not all organizations have that option, but I think that those are my closing remarks. Let's be human to each other. We need it now more than ever. So I think Musonda is going to allow for a few questions. And yeah, thanks for watching so far. Yay.
Thank you very, very much. And that was where we stand and what options are, not only for employers, but for employees to also understand what the decision is going to be going forward, especially in light of Zambian law. We do have some questions, and anybody else that has a question, please feel free to write it in the chat session. Is chat there so that we can share it with Musonda. A question that I got from Musonda is: would letting off a few organizations or companies avoid making losses in this pandemic? Sorry, did you hear me? The question was, would letting off a few employees help organizations or companies avoid losses during this pandemic?
Will letting off a few employees allow for organizations
avoid making losses during this pandemic?
Okay. So that's an interesting question. So I'm going to start by what is your, I'm looking for something. What is your job map? Okay, so what are the roles within your organization, and which ones are critical and which ones are not, and also what kind of industry are you in? So let's say you're in a very labor-intensive industry, and I always go back to farming because my grandmother. So if you're in a very labor-intensive industry and you genuinely need hands on deck to be productive, or to run your business, then letting go of a few employees may or may not help, because what you then do is put pressure on the employees who remain, because work still needs to be done. But let's say you have 3 office orderlies and you have 20 gardeners, and you decide that, okay, you know what, maybe these roles are not necessarily critical to our business. That might help. But also, before letting go of a few employees, at which level are you letting go of these employees? And I'm just being very practical about this. So if you have 10 general workers and you have one manager, and letting go of that one manager will cover the remuneration of those 10 general workers which of these roles do you need more? So yes, while letting go of roles or of certain positions may help you save money, what's the end game? And once again, what role do these people play within the organization? Because really and truly, it's easy to cut costs. You can say, I won't do this, I won't do that, I won't do that. But then how does that then later on affect your product quality and service? So yes and no.
In light of the same question, we know that Zambia is not in lockdown, which allows industry to continue operating, most industry to continue operating. But worst case scenario, we end up going, worst case scenario, it's like we estimate that we're about 40 days behind Italy. But we're hearing words like essential workers, non-essential workers being used instead of, if everybody was to stay at home and others had to work, then only essential workers would be considered to continue working. What would the differentiation or definition be for those who are essential or non-essential workers generally in our economy like Zambia?
Okay, so, and I think this has been mentioned in a few other places, but I'll go ahead. All right, so in Zambia, for example, agriculture is essential because firstly, it constitutes, I think, 70% of our workforce, both formal and informal. A few manufacturing industries may be essential. So if you run a factory and you produce, let's say, food, water, medicine, that's absolutely essential. Pharmacies, hospitals, clinics, absolutely essential. I know that certain countries are allowing restaurants, or at least certain restaurants, to go on so that people are then able to take food away on a takeaway basis, which is what we're also currently doing. So right now, I think for me, the big ones are food, medicine, and potentially money as well. So you would potentially see banks still working because the economy needs to still move. So those are essential. And I think also ICTs at this point in time, because if we're all going to be working remotely, how are we going to do this without that? So I think for me, Simonza, that's what I would say would be essential in the Zambian economy.
Thank you. Martin would like to know, on forced leave, about forced leave, will the days still be deducted from the employees or accrued or yet to accrue days?
Okay, noted. So Mape, you noticed that I talked about both annual leave as well as forced leave. So in an instance where your employees still have annual leave days, allow them to take their annual leave days. And only when these have been exhausted can you then how can I say, call upon forced leave. So no, forced leave is different from annual leave. Forced leave is when your employer tells you, go home, you're on leave, you're not going to be working because perhaps you're a hotel and hotels are no longer working in this economy. So for forced leave, as opposed to annual leave, you're not paid all of your benefits. You would only be paid your basic pay. So no, this would not be removed from your annual leave days because these are two completely different leaves.
Awesome. Truby would like to know practical monitoring mechanisms. We'd like to find out about practical monitoring mechanisms to use for organizations allowing staff to work from home. So can they staff working from home, can they be penalized for non-performing?
Okay. So that's a very interesting question, Truby, because that's always been, I think, management's bone of contention when it comes to allowing remote work. What happens if employees actually don't work from home? You know, like let's say you've been given deliverables and you don't deliver. So this will really come down to what you have in terms of your performance management systems, how you track employees' work, as well as your, to a certain extent, disciplinary and grievance procedures, because you have things in there like non-compliance with established procedure, you have things in there like insubordination, you have things in there like negligence. So you have to ensure that even as you enforce remote work, you have thought about how exactly it is you're going to enforce it. Because if you just tell me, go and work from home, what am I doing? What are my deliverables? And you might find that the manner in which you set targets might need to be a bit more structured, in that it should literally be on Monday, this is what you're doing, on Tuesday, this is what you're doing. Of course, you can't do that with everyone, but yes, you have to be very intentional about it. It won't happen. It won't happen in a vacuum. And once again, what does your code of conduct say? What does your performance management system say? And how do you just measure performance and deal with non-performance within your organization? So if these are policies that are not in place, they have to be in place now.
Sam is asking, what's the legally acceptable minimum basic pay?
What is the legally accepted minimum basic pay? Well,
Yes.
this is industry dependent, but currently minimum wage basic pay is 1050. So that's 1,000 kwacha. That's 1,050 kwacha. Yes. However, I know for a fact that there's drivers who have a different minimum wage. Clerks will also have a different minimum wage. Domestic workers will have a different minimum wage. So you have to look at the various minimum wages, but in the general order, literally general order, generally for everyone, it's 1050. On my page, Musonda Speaks HR, I'm pretty sure I posted the various statutory instruments for minimum wages. So perhaps I can share the link with you after.
That's exciting to know. In this age where now you might have businesses that say that they're possibly at the end of their month, and possibly at the end of the road, possibly with 1 month salary to pay, and they're looking at and diminished revenue coming into the business, if any revenue at all, and they might not be able to pay out a redundancy package. What would they be looking at in that term if they were possibly shutting down?
Okay. Unfortunately, like, this is not even a complicated thing. You talk to Ministry of Labor, you tell them where you are, you build your case. So even when it comes to declaring redundancy, you have to go to Ministry of Labor and you have to explain which positions are being declared redundant, why they're being declared redundant. In certain cases, they're actually able to come to your organization, look at your financials, just so that they're able to see that what you're reporting to be the truth is actually the truth. So there's no difference in this particular case. I'm going to say something, and this is my opinion. I don't necessarily think they will agree at any given point in time that employees should not be paid their separation packages, be it redundancy. I do, however, think that perhaps it could be stated that, maybe if we're able to reopen, these are the same people we will hire. And I think, Simonza, that's why I keep also talking about unpaid leave, because if you don't, or if you're unable to afford redundancies and you more or less freeze people's contracts and say, once we reopen our business, you'll be able to start, then at least that gives you a bit of flexibility. But once again, because these are things that are not apparent within our employment law, it has to be done in consultation with Ministry of Labour. And I don't know, there appears to be a certain level of apprehension about going to Labour, but it's their job. They're here to advise us, and we're going through unprecedented times. So it's okay to ask for advice, and that's my advice. Ask, ask, ask.
Great. In light of that, I would also like to say that any opinions here are not from legal. Neither Bongo Hive or Musonda here are legal. She indeed is an HR specialist, but if you'd like to consider what the legal options are, to get an opinion, I would encourage you. I will include a link here for the Africa Legal Network, which is a network that Bongo Hive's partner, Musa Dudia and Company, which is a legal firm, belongs to. They have highlighted in there sections of the law that apply during a period like this and give advice on where force majeures and other possibilities might be addressed. So they're covering sections from banking and finance, competition, corporate governance, cybersecurity, data protection, employment, fraud, general queries, immigration, insurance, litigation, real estate, and construction and tax. If you search by Zambia, you will see what the Zambian law says currently at the moment with regards to situations that we're in. I will include a link in the chat section for anybody to go to who would like to know what Zambian law says there. And the advice given for Zambia has been given by Musa Dudi and Company, which is a firm that is a partner of Bongo Hive in supporting entrepreneurs. Some Museri would like to find out, is there space to agree on pro rata payment? Say if payment pro rata per day was 200 kwacha and the month's payment is 4,000 kwacha. So instead of working 20 days per month, the employee only works for 5 days and you pay for those days under our law.
Okay, so Sam, yes, those are options that are viable. And I think I kind of addressed this when I talked about the potential salary reductions. However, you have a contract of employment with this person. You have agreed that these are the days you'll be working and this is how much you'll be paid and so on and so forth. So before that is implemented, the employee has to be taken into consideration. They have to be talked to. You might need to sign, not you might need to, you will have to sign other documentation, potentially an addendum to the contract to just say, you know, these are how your conditions of service are going to change. So yes, it is allowed, but you have to look at the documents that govern the employment relationship. That's your core. That's the basis of the entire relationship with your employee. So you can't negate what's in your employment contract. You have to consider that. And if what you propose is not what is in your contract, you may need to add an addendum to the contract and state how that has been changed.
Thank you very much. I'd like to know whether we have any more questions from the community. And if we don't have any, we will be moving towards close-up of the session. It looks like we may not have any more questions, Musonda, but I'd like to...
Very good, Simunza. I explained all of the things.
You didn't know. Sam has a question. So would it make sense to put this clause into employee agreements upfront in the future? You were talking, this was to do with pro rata payments.
Okay, let me look at the original question.
The original question was whether if a person was earning 4,000 kwacha and worked 20 days, you could cut it down to 200 kwacha.
Okay, yes.
So could you make an amendment to contracts or add it in future contracts to say, in cases of circumstances and we need to cut back your days, we would pay you pro rata?
Yes, I think personally an easier way to do it would be to pay people for the number of days worked. So if in your employment contract, you pay people for the number of days that they've worked, going forward, even if you need to reduce the days worked, it's then easy to continue in that way, as opposed to saying, if this happens, so literally people would then have a daily wage and they would be paid per day, such that if you then need to reduce the number of days worked, it's easy to do that. I wanted to say something, but I forgot. Okay, yeah. So think about it in terms of days worked. Yes, but this has to be done in accordance once again with the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019, because you have to remember that there is a set number of working hours per week that has been put in place. So that has to be considered, as well as minimum wages. So you can't go below the minimum wages for a certain period. So if in a month, the most a person, or at least the minimum wage says a person should earn that, your daily rate is calculated for the entire month, can't be less than that. So yes, it can be done, but once again, the things that form the employment relationship have to be taken into consideration.
Great, thank you. I think you've done an amazing job in explaining everything and all explaining the circumstances that we're in and how we are going to have to treat this as both people who are working in the business and people who are managing the businesses and working with the teams that we work with. Mm-hmm. And we hope that people have a better enlightenment of the situation. And like I said before, I'd advise that if people are going to work with their contracts, even though you've been given advice here, please feel free to reach out to the Labour Office for advice on what you can do. I believe that it is in their interest to see businesses continue to be in operations. Okay. So they will be understanding from that point of view. And also, please consult a legal mind if you're going to make changes to contracts. Please consult a lawyer if you're going to make changes to contracts so that things are in line with the laws of Zambia. I don't know if you have any final words, Musonda, before we close this.
Well, firstly, I'd like to thank you, Simunza, personally, because I think I've said this to you before. I've always wanted to do something with Bongo Hive, so I'm really happy. I'm so excited, and I'm not even telling people like good news or anything, but just excited to be here. But I remember when this entire saga began, and I was absolutely anxious. I was scared. And I then started to ask myself, okay, what can I do about it? What skills can I provide to the larger community? And that's what inspired me to write the specific blog I wrote, and now I'm here. So I think that's my advice to absolutely everyone. During this entire period, what can you do? How can you help the larger community? And honestly, just stay safe and breathe easy. We can't be great if we're dead. So yeah, take care of yourself. This is life we're talking about, guys. And yeah, thank you so much to the entire Bongo Hive team. Thank you for everyone who's tuned in. Mami, I see you. Hi. Yeah, thanks, Simunza. Those are my final words.
You are very welcome. It's been an honor it's been a real honor to host you. When we say at Bongo Hive that we work with great minds building viable solutions that change the world, the great minds that we refer to are the experts, the mentors, the entrepreneurs themselves, the investors that they get to work with, because it takes a whole ecosystem to build a viable economy and to build the actual solutions that affect everybody. And the contribution of your knowledge and the expertise that you've gained over the last years to this conversation will help entrepreneurs make good conversations. Just seeing the questions that have come in from the people means that people are wiser in making their decisions. This video will be posted up on YouTube for those that have missed this session. You'll be able to still view it. Please visit bongohive.co.za/webinars for more sessions like this that are coming up. Sessions that are coming up include the community in Africa with lessons gleaned from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and a brave new world with strategies to navigate through uncertainty. These will be coming up next week, and we are also planning on sessions that are coming up in the week after that. This is our contribution to the local and international ecosystem as we're getting through this time, and we are very fortunate that we have experts that we can speak with, that we can use this platform to share this knowledge with going forward. We encourage anybody to visit the Bongo Hive website for information. We are on Twitter as Bongo Hive, and we are on Facebook as Bongo Hive. Musonda has a blog, but you can also reach out to her on her LinkedIn page. Search for her on LinkedIn, Musonda Kambikambi on LinkedIn, and she will share she's on Facebook as well, correct? And she will share her blog information there as well. Thank you to everybody, and oh yes, thank you very much. George has shared the link to her LinkedIn page inside the chat there. Click there and you get to her LinkedIn page. Thank you to everybody, and a link has also been shared for the next talks there, and register with us at Eventbrite. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you at the next talk, and to catch you online, you're welcome to ask us any questions from there on. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.